Right here, right now, in the soil beneath your feet, grows something extraordinary, something that fed millions, something that was deliberately erased from history. And the craziest part, you probably consider it a pest. My name is Wyatt, and on Nature's Forgotten World, we uncover what history forgot to tell you. If you're ready to discover the truth about agriculture, make sure you hit that subscribe button right now. This story is going to challenge everything you thought you knew about civilization in America. For generations, we've been fed a specific narrative. Agriculture arrived in North America from the South, brought by outsiders who taught the native people how to farm. Before that moment, we're told, the inhabitants here were merely wandering groups of hunters, waiting for someone else to show them the path to civilization. Here's the problem with that version of history. It's completely false. The actual truth is far more remarkable. Indigenous communities across eastern North America did something truly revolutionary. They didn't wait for farming to find them. They created it. They shaped plants through deliberate selection and breeding. They made crops with bigger seeds, easier harvesting methods, and improved food production. And they sustained this incredible achievement for 4,000 years. Then it vanished completely. And understanding why this happened is crucial to understanding who we are today. The story of rediscovery begins in the 1930s when researchers exploring ancient shelters throughout Kentucky and Arkansas made an astonishing find. Inside the dry cave spaces, protected by geology and time, lay something puzzling. Thousands upon thousands of seeds that had been stored away for over 2 millennia. But here's where it gets interesting. These seeds looked different. They were bigger than expected. They showed a uniformity that nature doesn't typically produce. They carried every marker of intentional cultivation. Yet the scientific community had a ready explanation. These were worthless. Contamination, they claimed, mistakes, accidents scattered by wind or animals. This dismissal lasted 3 decades. The breakthrough came when researchers finally developed a proper method for finding plant material at archaeological locations. Using flotation techniques, scientists could carefully separate ancient remains from soil. When they applied this method throughout the Mississippi Valley and surrounding regions, the results were unmistakable. These same mysterious seeds kept appearing everywhere, in ancient cooking areas, inside storage chambers, even within preserved human remains. The evidence was overwhelming. These plants were staple foods. They sustained entire populations. Dr. Marcus Chen at the Smithsonian Institute became the leading voice documenting what the scientific community now recognizes as the Eastern Agricultural Complex. 5 distinct plants, each independently domesticated right here in North America. The evidence shows active cultivation beginning at least 3,800 years before our current era. That makes them older than Egyptian civilization. Let me introduce you to these 5 remarkable plants. Crop number 1, erect knotweed, a plant producing seeds high in nutrition and energy. Indigenous farmers transformed wild varieties through generations of careful selection. Crop number 2, little barley. Yes, a barley species growing right here on North American soil, domesticated independently thousands of years before European contact. It's virtually identical to the barley you might find in beverages today, except it was developed here without any outside influence. Crop number 3, goosefoot, the North American relative of quinoa, a plant that still grows wild across the continent. Its seeds were starchy and filling. Its leaves were consumed like modern spinach or other leafy vegetables. Crop number 4, knotweed species. Producing substantial quantities of seeds that resembled beans, knotweed provided consistent harvests throughout specific seasons. Rewind your imagination to the Mississippi Valley 3,000 years in the past. Picture communities arranged along the river's fertile zones, gardens tended with knowledge passed down through generations. But these weren't organized like modern industrial farms. Instead, the farming system featured multiple species thriving together simultaneously. Each plant served specific purposes. Each contributed different nutrients and harvested at different times, creating a resilient system that prevented starvation. In spring, when winter food supplies diminished and hunger became real, crop number 1 reached maturity. Its seeds could be heated in fire, roasted until crunchy, or ground into flour for bread. Following the season, crop number 2 ripened, providing grains that sustained populations. As summer advanced, crop number 3 flourished, offering seeds packed with starch and leaves suitable for cooking and eating raw. Through autumn, crop number 4 continued producing seeds that could fill bellies and provide sustained energy. Finally, crop number 5 delivered oil-rich seeds that could remain safe in storage baskets throughout winter, preventing malnutrition during months of cold and scarce wild resources. This wasn't basic food gathering. This was sophisticated systems thinking. This was agriculture refined through centuries of careful observation and intentional improvement. Scientists can measure these ancient seeds and directly compare them to wild modern versions. The pattern is undeniable. The cultivated forms were considerably larger. The protective seed covering was thinner, making processing simpler. The seeds released from plants more easily, making harvesting faster and less labor-intensive. These characteristics are the fingerprints of domestication. They're identical to the transformation that converted wild teosinte into corn. They match the process that created wheat from wild grasses beside the ancient Fertile Crescent in Asia. Indigenous farmers accomplished this transformation independently. They had zero contact with civilization in Mexico. They possessed no knowledge of how agriculture worked anywhere else on Earth. Yet they engineered farming from scratch, all on their own, roughly 4,000 years ago. This period of agricultural development lasted for centuries, and then circumstances shifted. Around 900 of the current era, corn that could actually survive in cooler northern regions began spreading throughout eastern areas. This wasn't accidental migration. This was movement through intentional trade and adoption. Corn changed everything because it offered something the 5 ancient crops could not provide at the same scale. Corn grew fast. Corn stored easily. Corn could feed the growing populations concentrating in emerging city centers. Cahokia, located near present-day St. Louis, eventually housed more inhabitants than London. The previous crops couldn't compete with this efficiency, not because they were inferior, but because corn offered uniformity and simplicity. A single plant, grown repeatedly, scaled up infinitely. The story takes a tragic turn here. Within 300 years, the entire eastern agricultural complex collapsed. Farmers abandoned the practice of selecting seeds from superior plants. The cultivation of the traditional varieties ceased. Without human intention maintaining them through selective breeding, the crops reverted. Seeds became smaller. Protective coatings grew thicker and harder. Yields dropped. The domesticated versions simply disappeared, becoming wild again. Then the colonizers arrived. What they encountered was not emptiness. It was not unused wilderness. It was the aftermath of a transformed landscape. But because European agriculture looked different, organized into straight rows, consisting of single crops only, marked by boundaries, they didn't recognize what they were seeing. They observed what appeared to be empty land. They saw hunting grounds. They saw space available for taking. The wild descendants of the 5 crops were labeled weeds, and in the colonial consciousness, weeds represented enemies requiring elimination. This is where the narrative becomes deeply troubling. These plants that once fed civilizations are now systematically attacked. Not weed species appear in agricultural guides devoted to weed destruction. Farmers apply chemical sprays specifically designed to poison them. University extension offices distribute documents explaining methods for complete elimination. Goosefoot, the relative of quinoa, the plant that sustained millions, is now called pigweed, as though it's worthless. Large agricultural corporations created crops genetically modified to withstand powerful chemical sprays designed specifically to kill it. Sumpweed is categorized as a noxious allergen, grouped with ragweed, designated for eradication rather than cultivation. Little barley is dismissed as a lawn problem. Crop number 1 cannot legally be sold as seed in certain states. 4,000 years of agricultural knowledge growing in your driveway, sprayed in your fields, pulled from your gardens, thrown into garbage. The cruelty of this is staggering. In other parts of the world, goosefoot is cultivated as a nutritious vegetable called batura, consumed by millions who recognize its value. Meanwhile, in America, we invest billions poisoning this exact same plant. Why? The answer reveals everything about systems of power. You cannot take out a patent on a plant growing wild. You cannot build dependency on a crop that reproduces without human intervention. You cannot market chemical poisons designed to eliminate something if people recognize it as food. The system didn't suppress these plants because they lack value. Exactly the opposite. It suppressed them because they possess value that cannot be monetized, managed, or claimed by corporations. The story gains hope in recent years. In 2017, a researcher named Helena Martinez accomplished something that hadn't occurred in 5 centuries. She grew the sleeping crops. At Cornell University and later at Washington University, she planted crop number 1 and crop number 3 in experimental areas. No artificial climate control, no chemical treatments, no special soil additions, only the plants themselves and the standard environmental conditions ancient farmers would have encountered. What happened next was extraordinary. When crop number 3 and crop number 1 were planted together exactly as indigenous farmers once arranged them, the productivity exceeded global averages for similar modern crops like quinoa and buckwheat. The yields compared directly to traditionally grown corn. The sleeping crops weren't abandoned because they failed to feed people. They were abandoned because another option succeeded too well. The most significant moment came differently. Martinez presented her findings to Native American women's circles in the St. Louis area. These knowledge keepers offered crucial correction. The phrase "lost crops" was problematic, they explained. It carried false implications that indigenous cultures had disappeared. They offered better language. The crops aren't lost, they said. They're sleeping. They're waiting for their human relatives to re-establish the relationship. They're ready to be planted again when people choose to plant them. And here's the remarkable truth. The wild versions still exist. They never actually disappeared. Lamb's quarters, the wild form of crop number 3, grows across North America in places where soil has been disturbed, in gardens, along roadsides, in cracks between concrete in parking areas. The leaves contain more nutrition than spinach. The seeds cook similarly to quinoa. Crop number 1 grows in fields and disturbed ground throughout eastern regions, seeds that are starchy and satisfying, young shoots that are edible. These plants aren't rare, they're abundant. They survived 4 centuries of deliberate suppression. They remained visible the entire time, waiting. Learning to identify these plants takes minimal time. Growing them requires virtually zero effort. They expand themselves, exactly as they have for millennia. Every seed you save becomes a choice against the machinery that erased them. Every meal prepared becomes an act of remembrance. Every person you teach continues traditions that industrial systems tried to erase. 4,000 years of agricultural knowledge, 5 crops domesticated independently, an entire food system vanished, not because it failed, because it couldn't be owned. The domesticated varieties have gone extinct. We cannot restore them. But their wild relatives remain, pushing through cracks, surviving chemical attacks, dormant in the soil, and waiting.
Indigenous knowledge keepers don't call them lost, they call them sleeping. Sleeping things can be awakened. This information changes things. Share this before the algorithm buries it. If you found value here, subscribe to Nature's Forgotten World so you don't miss the next revelation. Like this video. Leave a comment telling us what surprised you most about this history. The more you engage, the more we can continue bringing buried knowledge back to light. The sleeping seeds are waiting. What will you do?